Hi, my name's Tim Mason. I'm a member of PNWA in Rogers, Arkansas, and I would like to share a testimony with you. I've been back in church approximately 11 years now. First time I received the Holy Ghost, I was 16 years old. A short time after that, shortly after I'd turned 17, I met a young girl that later became my wife. We were married when I was 19. She was 17. And God was He was really good to me and did some amazing things for us. We had our son when I was 21 years old. And at some point about that time, I began to grow lax in my relationship with God. I was still going to church, and I was struggling with whether or not I wanted to continue, but I wasn't sure how I was going to tell my wife I wasn't going to go to church with her anymore. And I really cared about her and I cared about my son, but I had lost my zeal and I had lost my love for God because I wasn't doing the things I needed to do to maintain that relationship. And I remember when I told her that I wasn't going to church, how devastated she was. And at that point, I turned my back on God and walked away. And that began a 24-year journey. It was a process. It wasn't something that just happened overnight. It was a process over time that just failing to maintain my relationship, that's what it ended up as. And I began to drink, I began to smoke. And those things, led to drug abuse, pornography, many other things in my life that were totally against everything that I was taught growing up. And I never intended for it to go that far and for things to turn out the way that they did, but it's just the way it goes. I do want to share one experience that was probably at about rock bottom when my life began to turn some. I let myself go so far that I'd actually began to dabble and use acid. And that's just the way things go as you begin going and experiencing and sampling different things. It's like one thing led to another. I remember coming home one night, and of course, drinking and all that, it all goes together. You're drinking and you're doing the drugs. And I remember taking some acid, and I came home and I went to bed, and at some time during the night, my mind woke up. I remember having these horrendous nightmares, and these nightmares were so real. It was like there was something trying to kill me, and I was running for my life. And I remember running till I ran myself into a dead-end place. And there was nowhere to go, nowhere to turn. I couldn't describe what was trying to kill me. I just had that fear and that sensation in my body that something was trying to kill me. And I remember waking up, I opened my eyes, and I wasn't breathing. And I had evidently not been breathing for long enough that I could not move my body. I tried my best to move my hands and my feet and my legs, and I could not move. And I was terrified. I thought I was dying. And I can remember closing my eyes and just my mind began to tell my body to breathe. Just kept saying, breathe, breathe, breathe. And I remember gasping for air. And I began to breathe, and as I began to breathe, then my feeling came back to my body parts. And I started being able to move a little bit at a time. And I thought, man, I'm never doing that again. Well, that lasted about 2 or 3 days. And I tried it again, and I come home, and the exact same thing happened. And I don't know what it was. I still can't describe it to this day, but I remember that terrified feeling in my mind and in my body of death. I just started saying, oh God, am I gonna die like this? Is this the end? I remember waking up after that experience, and I determined in my mind at that point that I was never gonna do that again. That didn't end my drinking, that didn't end my drug abuse, but you know, that was about 4 years into our marriage, and my drug use and alcohol drinking and stuff continued to the point that, I was a functioning party person. I worked, I kept a job, but it got to the point that I couldn't support my habit anymore with my income and my bills, and that led to dealing. The devil takes you places that you never dreamed that you will go. Once you walk away from God and you walk away from that umbrella of protection that He places over His people, you're susceptible to anything. And one thing led to another, and it got to a point that we couldn't pay our bills no more. We had to give up our home. The economy had slowed down. And now that I look back, I think a lot of these things had begun to take place because I had a wife at home that, even though I had stopped going to church, she continued. She took my son. She kept him involved in anything to do with the church. She kept herself involved with the church, and she prayed for me continually. And I think that began a process of God trying to get me away from those things. And then the next thing I knew, we were having to move because we were losing our home. My dad had a business in Northwest Arkansas, and I contacted him, and he agreed to let me go to work for him. And we moved to Northwest Arkansas in 1990. And I got away from all the old friends that I had. I still, at that point I had pretty much gotten away from the drugs. I was still drinking, still smoking, doing those things. But, it was just a slow process of coming back to where I needed to be able to rededicate myself to God. A faithful wife that prayed for me, family members that prayed for me continually over time. I began a career driving a truck over the road, and we had a daughter in the process, and that little girl every Sunday would say, "Daddy, are you going to church with me today?" "No, baby, not today." And she would cry. I remember that just like it was yesterday. And the very next Sunday, "Daddy, are you going to church with me today?" "No, baby, not today. I got to go to work." And after a while, you get tired of telling them no. I remember we were having a weekend revival, in church in Springdale, Arkansas. And man, I was so convicted, and I was sitting in my seat, and I wanted to go pray, and the devil wouldn't let me. And I blame it on him, but it was my fault. I wouldn't get up and go. But one of the young men from the church got up and come back there and just asked me if he could pray with me. And it's like the dam broke. And from that moment, it began a process of me praying back through and getting back in church. And that's been almost 11 years now. And, from day one, when I made up my mind that I was going back to church and that I was going to be faithful to God, I told God, if you'll work this out, I promise that I'll be faithful. Every time the door's open, if I can be there, I'll be there. And, I've done my best to honor that. And God has blessed me. I just felt, I needed to share this testimony to hopefully be a blessing to other people that are in the same situation maybe, or, that may be on the verge of going back. Please don't do that. There's plenty of people that are willing to help you. PNWA is a loving church, and they're full of people that are just ready and waiting to pray with you and to help you and be a strength and an encouragement to you. And I hope this testimony has blessed you. And please, don't wait as long as I did. 24 years is a long time. And there was a lot of opportunities in that time that if it hadn't been for a praying family, that I probably wouldn't be here today, because I did a lot of crazy things. And thankfully, God had mercy and He spared me, and I'm here today, and I'm just thankful for that. And I hope that it blesses you, and just don't allow Satan to trip you up like he did me. Don't let him pull you away from the church and pull you away from God and the things that are right and know to do, because it ends up in places that you really don't want to be. Thank you so much for your time, and God bless you.